Hey guys, welcome back to Cereal at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and I am really excited about this conversation with Mr. Toby Roan. Welcome to Cereal at Midnight, Toby.
Thanks, Heath. Good to be here. I'm really stoked about it.
I was trying to figure out where I first became aware of you, and I'm pretty sure it was through the 50 Westerns, through the 50 Westerns from the 50s website. Um,
It's
but
been
it's
around forever, so but I can see that.
it was probably about 10 years ago. And I was like, was it what led me there? And it might have been the movie Quantas. I can't say for sure, but I've been proselytizing Quantas for a long time.
You
And
should.
I know you're a fan too. And you
Yes, very much.
so much so that you're on the Kino Lorber Blu-ray for that doing the commentary.
Yeah, I was so stoked to do that.
So okay, where oh man, where should we even start? So you are one of the voices who is really talking about Westerns not exclusively, but on a much larger, like that's a lot of your focus. And there's not a whole lot of Westerns people out there these days. There's some, but not a whole lot. And I think that's one of the things that I connect with you about is just the love of Westerns, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Where where did that come from, do you think?
Oh well, it's the introduction to my book covers this, so I have it logged in the back of my mind. I grew up in a film collector house, so I grew up watching movies in 8 millimeter and 16 millimeter, and even dabbled in 35 for a while, which was too much work. And so I watched tons of westerns, 30s, 40s, 50s westerns on film in our house in a little screening room. And so I got I got indoctrinated with this stuff a long time ago in probably the best possible way. I saw these, real technicolor prints of these things. And so they made a huge impression, as you might imagine. And then, you go, life goes on, and I was in my 30s, and just kind of bumped into three movies kind of back to back, not for any real reason. It just happened. And they were No Name on the Bullet with Audie Murphy, um, The Tall T with Randolph Scott, and Last Train from Gun Hill with Kirk Douglas. Just kind of like within the span of like 2 weeks, it was like boom, boom, boom. And I was like, oh my God, it just blew the back of my head off. I was like, these are the coolest things ever. And I had actually seen a couple of them before, but it's just like all of a sudden, I was like, I got to see more of these. And I just started, you know, digging into them. And the more I found, the more I like them. And it's one of those things, like some people say with like jazz and other things, it's like the, in order to appreciate one thing, you have to know them all. And the more Westerns I saw, the more you can appreciate what somebody did with all of those, conventions and all the popular themes and things, how people come at them, and how you approach the fact that you have, you know, a week and 150,000 bucks or whatever it is to make a movie. I just can't think of any other genre where that kind of ingenuity is there So the cheaper, smaller ones, I began to appreciate those as much, if not more than, you know, Shane and High Noon and so many of the big ones that everybody knows. It's the smaller ones was where the jewels were.
That's
So
right. Did I tell you that I'm watching the Range Busters movies? Did I tell you about that?
no,
That's what I'm
no.
doing now. I was like, my path has led me to Gene Autry and Roy Rogers. And now I'm doing, Crash Corrigan. And the thing that I love about these, I've kind of come out in the last few months. This year, I'm like, I'm really tired of franchise films at the
Yeah,
cinema because it's just like huge spectacle. The executives are the ones who are making the movies. It's not the filmmakers. They're giving these,
right.
you can tell there's notes every single day. And Bob Iger even said, for they had a low shareholder call or something like things were going down, and he was like, it's because executives weren't on the set every single day. And I'm like, nah, man, you don't get it. So people say to me like, well, you like all these. How many Rangebusters movies did they make, and how many Durango Kid movies are there?
Right,
These things, and
62, I think Durango Kid movie, something like that.
but they're
66
so
Hopalong
different.
Cassidy movies. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, yeah, Hopalong Cat. They're so different though. I'm like, okay, they made these in like 8 days, maybe for a shoestring budget, and
less than a
maybe
hundred
they do
grand.
one take of something, and they're like, we're moving on.
Right.
It's a completely different thing, and it's so fingerprinty. It's so human and so like flawed. There'll be like weird line deliveries and things, but I don't know. I just love it because it's so approachable. And
Yes,
I
it
don't know.
is.
When you said that to me, it kind of spoke to me when you talked about, how what you said it was like a film collecting house growing up. How did that come about? Like, is your
My
your
dad was
parents
a
really?
movie nut, and he collected film prints. This was before home video. So if you collected movies, you collected film. And, it wasn't the little 8 millimeter castle things. That's what I had as a kid, but it was, prints, and you had to sort of leap into this sort of gray or black market and they traded films back and forth and stuff like that. And, they just came and went through the house all the time, and we'd hang on to the favorites and get rid of others. And so, I mean, it was an awesome way to grow up. I mean, it's like films. It was like film school. I mean, and
Oh, absolutely.
I'd watch
Yeah.
things over and over and over. I mean, I saw Pit and the Pendulum in Panavision just dozens of times. You get off the school bus and you walk home and watch Pit and the Pendulum in scope. Why not? So
Where
that
were you guys watching these things? In the house, or did you
yeah,
have some?
we had turned our garage into sort of a little screening room, and everybody has something like that now, but then it was just kind of a deal. You had to cut a hole in the ceiling so that the reels would fit because the ceiling was too low. I mean, it was really stupid. It's kind of an interesting way to live, but it was just a hobby that
That's
kind of took over. But
that's incredible. What did your friends think about it? Did they come over for things?
yeah, they come over. It was cool. And I go to their house, and I just didn't understand that other people didn't have movies in their house. They want to watch a movie. They'd get out the TV guide. I'm like, really? You don't have like, Tim Holt in the closet?
That's the name of your next book, Tim Holt in the Closet.
So it was just really cool. And I watched on TV like everybody else. And then home video came and dug in really deep. But that was just kind of a neat way to go to movies. And it was the 70s, and the movies in the theater were cool, At the Earth's Core and Jaws and Sorcerer and Rollerball. So, movies were really cool then too. So the new ones. So I was just kind of just a great, I was really blessed. I don't really think about it, but I was
You
really
really were.
blessed to.
Yeah. Well, because what's interesting to me about that whole thing is that I think that I'm coming to realize now, I don't know that we talk about being cinephiles or movie fans. I mean, a lot of people now identify as a collector. And I'm like, okay, well, you can be a collector and not love movies. You can just like
Yeah,
them for value or for whatever.
right.
But a love of movies, I think needs to be taught. I don't know that it just happens. I feel like movies, in what you're telling me, you were taught a love of movies from a very
Yeah,
young
oh,
age.
absolutely, because I was exposed to so much.
Yeah.
But um, it just it's interesting how there are these movies that you see and you go, oh, it's like this light bulb. Oh, now I understand how movies work. I mean, Pit and the Pendulum again. That was one that just was huge to me because of the sound design and the quick cuts and the close-ups and things like that, and the weird slanted scope effects and the colors and things that Corman did with it. That one just really the language of movies, as they call it. That was one where I was just like, oh, okay. You go with no sound, and then you have a loud sound, and that makes an impact. And that just all those little tricks. That was one where I really started to notice that stuff. Obviously, I watched it many many times.
Yeah. Yeah. Just wore that printout. Just when you
Yeah,
handed it back in, it was like,
so that's really cool. That was one of the things that was cool. Is sort of like I think everybody has it. Is there's like a movie that flips that switch, and you go from yeah, I like movies, so do lots of people, to like I have to watch as many of these as I can. It just is becomes the thing. So
yeah.
and movies sort of open you up to other things. I got into music largely. Um, Going to see Live and Let Die and loving the Paul McCartney song, and then I turned into a Beatles nerd, and on that went. So everything sort of seemed to branch off from the movies a lot.
I love that. That's amazing. I before we get too far from your intro, I want to let people know that you have written multiple books. I would reference A Million Feet of Film, The Making of One-Eyed Jacks. I would reference another run through The Gauntlet about the Clint Eastwood film. Now, where you I know we don't have to talk too much about your day job, but I mean you're a writer by
I'm
trade.
an
This is
advertising writer. I work
yeah.
for an ad agency out of Richmond called West Carey Group. We do.
Talk to me just a little bit about how you started. See, I want to get to the 50 Westerns from the 50s book project and how it has did okay, I'm gonna jump to that really quick because did when you started that blog, that website, you were just gonna post like pictures,
Yeah, well, it
photos
was
and
weird working in advertising, and social media was starting to be a thing, and people would go, "We're going to have to start writing some blog posts," and I was like, "I've seen a blog," and so I thought I should do one. And around that time, I wanted to write a book because I wanted to dedicate it to my mom. She had passed away, and my mom was a big reader, and so I was like, I want to write a book, and I got to write a blog, and a blog would be a cool way to um, promote the book and find out if there's anybody out there that gives a crap. If nobody looks at it, then I guess nobody cares. And so that kind of that's where it all started from. And I've always wanted to write a book. I love to write, obviously, I love to write for a living. And so it just was a kind of a natural kind of progression. And then the One-Eyed Jacks book. One-Eyed Jacks was going to be the 51st Western. It was going to be the 50s Western that wasn't a 50s Western because it came out in 61 after many delays. And it kind of bridges that gap between the old, what we think of as, a 50s Western and then, more of the 60s revisionist, those kinds of things. And so that was going to be sort of like the little wrap up of the thing. And as I researched it more and more, the story got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm like, this is a book all by itself. And so I gave myself 6 months to write it, and it took me 8 years. But just one of those things. So that was kind of weird. Everything kind of started with that the 50s Western. And again, it was after watching those three movies and going, oh my gosh,
yeah.
these are terrific. So
In my mind, you started the blog and then you realized that the 50s Westerns are like a lifetime's pursuit.
yes, it is. There's hundreds and hundreds of them.
Yeah.
If you count all the B Westerns that, the B
Yeah.
Westerns.
Oh, if you count B Westerns, there's even more than that.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
If you go, there's like 40 something Tim Holtz, there's 60 something Durango Kids, there's 66 Hopalong Cassidy's, there's 80 Roy Rogers or something like that, and you get in the hundreds pretty fast.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's one of those things where the more you watch, the more you appreciate them, and then you watch this one and you go, now I want to go watch this one because it's like the theme in this one kind of refers back to this one. I want to go back and watch this one, or you see a writer or an actor or whatever that you kind of go, I want to go back and dig into them a little bit, and then you've gone, it's just this weird rabbit hole. And then my list of the 50s Westerns, my original list was lame. It was like all, Gunfight at the OK Corral and Shane and The Searchers. And those are wonderful movies. I love them. But I can't really add anything else about that.
Yeah, those are the poster children for 50s
Right.
Westerns.
But I can evangelize the crap out of Fury at Showdown and Quantes and, Fury at Gunsight Ridge, which is such a cool movie.
I send people the Quantes. I'm like, listen, guys, Quantes is just such an amazing. It's the quiet. It takes you by surprise. It's almost like a little bottle piece. Like it's like very limited locations, and then like one of the character. I feel like it influenced Tarantino, whether he acknowledges.
I would think so, and nobody ever talks about it. One of the things that blows me away about it is, of course, it's very set bound.
Yeah.
But how the whole movie takes place in one day, so it starts at daytime, gets dark, and then the wrap up is in the dawn. Is what they did with the lighting and stuff at night with the red as the sun is coming up and all that kind of stuff. It's for a cheap little movie, and I mean it's not. It was it's a middle budget, not a super low budget. Just for a formula picture that they were going to stick out on the probably the bottom of a bill somewhere. It's got so much going for it, and Fred McMurray is just awesome in it. The dialogue is really cool. Um, it's just great. There's a
Yeah.
couple little things about it that bug me, but for the most part, it's just great.
When I send people to it, because I love it so much, I send people to it and they're like, I mean, it was okay. It was good. Like, and I'm like, oh, you don't get it, man. You
Yeah,
don't
you
get it.
gotta watch it.
We connect with these things on a deeper level. And I like what you're saying about like you just start to connect like, oh, this has this actor, and then I watch this actor and this
Like,
thing. Here's an example. So there's a Tim McCoy movie that's got Buck Jones in it, and then I'm like, well, here's these two worlds colliding, and then you want to go, you just follow whatever,
right, exactly, exactly. And then
chase
you
the
go,
threads.
I can't find this one. And then it
Yeah.
becomes this major crisis that you can't find this movie that you really, this is the only one of those I haven't seen. So it's really interesting. And
How do we recommend these things to people? I mean, I do my part, obviously you do your part. The biggest barrier that I think these movies face, and not just Westerns, primarily Westerns, but also just anything before 1960. I had a guy tell me the other day, a film professor told me the other day that most of the students in his class are not watching movies made before the year 2000.
I wouldn't watch
So
any made after
I
2000.
know, right? Like, how do we, if you've grown up in the TikTok generation, how in the world are you even being exposed to things with Lee Marvin or, even John Wayne, the biggest guy ever? Like, I don't think, they don't know these movies.
No, they
How
don't.
do we further shine a light on this stuff for people that don't know about it?
I don't know, but but I figured out you have to be really careful because you should recommend something and you go, this is just such a cool movie, and then to them it's just some cowboy movie. It's pretty good, but when you've seen four westerns in your life, is Quantes going to make as the fifth? Is it going to make much of an impression? Like we're saying that
Yeah.
you need that context is when you start realizing which ones really rise because of what they overcome or what they add to something that's been done before. It's really hard. And I used to work in a video store. I got two stories. One person came in and said they wanted a movie that was scary and suspenseful, but not too scary. And I gave them Psycho. They had not seen it. They came back and they said it was okay. They turned it off halfway through because black and white hurt their eyes.
Okay.
Then one day a guy came in and he said he wanted something funny. He was sick of the same old stuff, but he wanted something funny. And he said, what have you watched lately that was funny? And Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I mean, Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is the cure for depression. I just can't, the world's coming to an end, but that's okay because I'll just put on the Blu-ray of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Everything will be all right. And the guy came back and raved about it, said his girlfriend hated it, and he gave me a tip. So you never know. But it's hard because I know that we're nerds about this stuff, and it's what we see so much more in them than the average person does.
Yeah.
And we have that context and that just whatever it is. And so it is really, really hard. My daughter, like, her favorite movie is What's Up, Doc? And she likes film noir stuff, Detour and things like that. We watch stuff like that. She's 23. She likes that stuff. She doesn't like all of it, but you can't, all like all of them. But she likes One Eye Jack. She was incredible when I was researching the book. She got on Google Maps and would just find stuff, up there around Monterey. And so, she got it. She gets into that stuff. She likes that stuff. She likes a lot of new stuff, but she likes that stuff. When she was really little, she loved Phantom Empire.
Really?
Gene Autry, yeah. And
Well, it's got a robot
I'm
in it.
thinking, I'm Father of the Year.
Yeah.
My
Well, in
toddler
a lot
loves
of ways,
Phantom Empire. I'm going to hang it up here. So
that's incredible. How may I ask how old your daughter is?
She's 23 now. Yeah.
Okay, my my daughter's 18, and we she was raised, my wife and I both watch lots and lots of old things. So she was raised with she loves I Love Lucy, she loves you know Dick Van Dyke Show, things like that. Um but she doesn't get the Westerns thing. And I mean, I guess I can understand it, but I showed her like she said something a while back, and I'm trying to remember exactly what she said. She said something to the I was talking about Westerns, and she was like, "Well, those are all just like you know uh rah rah America belittling the Native American." And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, she doesn't even know what
Right.
she's talking about.
Right.
And like, where does this opinion come from? You don't like, can you name five Westerns? And I don't want to be the gatekeeper who's like, name five Westerns. But
Right.
I'm like, do you have any information that has led you to this opinion? And I think that's kind of typical for maybe her generation and just the young people. The kids today don't know,
Right. Right.
they have no awareness of what these,
Well, we don't study our history, so why would we study our film history?
yeah,
You know, if we don't care about old things, if everything's about the new and latest thing, then movies have just fallen right there in there, right with that stuff. Now, my wife is a big old classic TV nut, and so they watch all that stuff, and they taught me to really appreciate The Rifleman, which I think might be the greatest Western series ever made. But
really.
oh,
Oh, now hold on. You got to elaborate on that because there's some great, like you're talking
there's a
about
lot
Better
of
Than
great Western series,
Bonanza.
but The Rifleman is really cool because it's obviously made for nothing. The town is indoors. Um, it's a half hour long. It's as unpretentious as it could possibly be. They pack a lesson, a moral, a theme into every single episode, one way or another. And Chuck Connors gets to shoot a bunch of people. And I don't know what else. A
All right.
former Dodger is shooting people with. I can't beat that. I'll take that every day of the week.
Okay, on the Chuck Connors, let's run with Chuck Connors because I would also when I think of Chuck Connors, I think of oh, Kill Them All and Come Back Alone. The isn't that I think that's the name of it. It's a spaghetti western with Chuck Connors
Yes,
in it.
yes, yes, yes.
Spaghetti westerns are a good gateway for younger people that haven't watched a lot of westerns. I go, well, you
Yeah,
watch the spaghettis first because they don't ask anything of you. They have very little themes. They just I mean some of them do, obviously,
right,
but they're so stylish and so flashy. I
right.
find them to be a good gateway.
I hadn't thought about it, but they might be. I find most of them boring. And I
Yeah.
guess they're like a lot of, there's like 10, 12 spaghetti westerns that just blow me away.
Hmm.
You know, Great Silence, all that stuff. The ones that ever. I mean, that's one of those things where when everybody picks the same ones as the greatest ones, and they're all right. Everybody has figured out there's this handful of spaghetti westerns that are just terrific. But just like with any other genre, there's a lot of crap too, and I find a lot of them boring. They just, But I grew up watching, you know, Tim Holt, and to me, anything more than like 75 minutes, it's like why? I can, that's
Well,
one of
and
my
it's gonna
movies today. I can watch two True Color Roy Rogers films in the time I could watch, the Avengers, and the choice is
maybe three. You might be able to work
maybe three.
three.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. So,
Yeah. Depends on if you're watching those edited after the television era, if they're the 53-minute the
don't get me started, man.
if people don't know what we're talking about, with like some of those movies are permanently edited. Like they cut the original camera, they cut
They
the
cut
film.
the negatives and they made black and white TV prints, and so some of them the color material is not only is beyond cut, it's gone, and so it's just terrible. And the ones that they have restored, Paramount owns them now, and they look just wonderful. And it's just a crime what they did with those movies.
Yeah,
Just
it is.
a crime. That was one of the cool things about in the movie collector days is that those prints floated around, and so there were, TV prints were cut, so you'd want to find one that was a rental print or whatever, and so some of them would be black and white, but they were complete, and I'd take complete over cut in color, but they butchered those things. They really did. Because a movie's only 67 minutes and you cut it down to 53. That's a major percentage of screen time just gone.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't do it like they didn't go, well, we'll just trim this riding scene. They just cut out a whole scene. So it's not like they did it, with any real care. They just got out the scissors.
Yeah. That's a tragedy.
But I have a soapbox that is labeled Roy Rogers TV prints. I get on that thing every once in a while just to rant.
I've struggled with Roy Rogers because I didn't get it. I didn't grow up with it and I just didn't get it. I thought he was, see, I associated Roy Rogers with being in the faith movement of my childhood, always talking on these like religious shows and stuff. And when I've gone back to watch his movies, especially the earlier ones are pretty, I wouldn't say they're dark, but there's more going on there than I
Yeah.
had thought there would be. And I'm finding a new appreciation for him
Yeah.
and for Dale.
I I think there's like three. I do that. I have this in one of my commentaries. There's like three chunks of Roy Rogers movies. There's the early ones that are like the historic things and they're period pieces, and he's Jesse James or Billy the Kid or something like that. But he's not a bad guy. He's just Billy the Kid, whatever. And then there's this middle period when they started playing up the music, and they got the is rather than him sitting around a campfire singing a song, it's like a production number. And they put a little bit more money. I'm not a big fan of those. And then the last 27 of them, maybe something like that, where William Whitney took them over when he came back from the war. Some of those where the true color ones come in. And Roy's outfits aren't as flashy. The action is more, of course, it's William Whitney. So the action is just awesome. And those are the ones my favorites. Those are my favorites. Is the Whitney ones, and of course they're a little bit longer. So when you find the ones that are cut for TV, they're really a mess. But like Trail of Robin Hood is my favorite Christmas movie of all time. Have you seen that one?
Mm-mm.
The one where
No.
he's fighting the people who are trying to shut down the Christmas tree farms. And I'll forward you a link to it or something.
Okay.
It's man, I don't know what to say. It's just awesome. So Roy is Roy, and it's modern day.
Yeah.
And Jack Holt has Tim Holt's dad. It has a Christmas tree farm, and he sells the Christmas trees at cost so that poor kids can have a Christmas tree. And everybody is in awe of Jack Holt because he's this silent film star. And when he runs one of his movies at the little thing while everybody is like getting the Christmas trees ready, it's like a silent movie, but it was done new. So it's Jack Holt as an old man in a silent movie.
Wow.
And then at the end, when they've got to go get the Christmas trees and deliver them, all the Republic cowboys come out and help. So it's got this big grand finale with all of these guys pulling these wagons full of Christmas trees through a forest fire. It is, and it's a Christmas movie. It's just great.
Well, I gotta go. We're out of time.
It is great. It is one of my all-time favorite movies, and it is without doubt my favorite Christmas movie.
What year? 40s, right? So like where in the
Yeah, it was 49, I think. It was one of his last ones. And that was one of the things that convinced me that I could cheat on my 50 westerns from the 50s, because there was no way I was going to not write a chapter about Trail of Robin.
Yeah. How's that project coming, by the way?
It's coming. It's coming. It's a source of regret and personal belittlement, but it's going to be good, I think.
You say it's a source of regret just because of the scope of it?
Yeah, well, no, it's just that life gets in the way and it just gets ignored for a couple of months. Then I come back and you got to get reacquainted with it, so you lose some time there. It's like where if I was writing on it every day, it would just be so much easier and it would be done. But if I had written it in the first 2 years that I'd started it, it would have been terrible because I just didn't have the appreciation for them, and I hadn't found. The list of movies, like I said earlier, my list of movies was all the obvious ones.
Hmm.
And then as I watched more and more and more, I was like, well, forget that one. Let's add this one in there. And so it's that part of it has been worthwhile. But I just wish it was done. I just would like to.
Yeah.
I mean, because I get emails every once in a while. So when is this book going to come out anyway? I get those every once in a while. That makes sense.
Well, I would wonder if you would think that the project, like it has introduced you to so many other things that you might want to write about more. Like you might want to
Oh
write
yeah,
about Republic heroes more than you want to write
oh
about
yeah.
this expansive decade of film.
Right. Well, my wife is helped me out with the research. She's really good with those newspaper archives and stuff. And so she has found so much great stuff that there have been movies that I would add to the book just so I could put a really cool story in there. And it's interesting how, and this is one of the big things with one of my jacks is movies that have a story about them, about how they got made. You realize if you read contemporary reports and you follow them and stuff, that stuff is so either exaggerated or a lie or whatever. And that was one of the things with the One Eye Jacks deal is you just have to tell. It's like Rashomon. You have to tell. Like Stanley Kubrick getting fired. Did he fired? Did he get fired? Did he quit? What happened? And so it's that's kind of interesting is digging around and finding out that stuff.
Hmm. Yeah.
But it's
We
going
sh
to be pretty good, I think. It's going to be pretty good.
Whenever it happens, no rush. Whenever it happens, it is going to be an essential volume in any film
Well,
fan's
one of the
bookshelf.
coolest things that has happened since I started the blog, is people would go, I went and checked out, I don't know, Hell Canyon Outlaws because you said it was awesome. And you were right. It is awesome. So that's what I hope that, if anything, that the book does that, is that people go out and dig around and find some of these movies. Quantes would be an example of the ones that nobody knows about that are really cool. Fury at Gunsight Ridge, Fury at Showdown. Um, there's just Rebel in Town. There's just so many really cool ones that nobody knows about. And so I just kept, all the big ones got eliminated so that I could just keep on going with the small ones. But
Did the did the blog open up opportunities for the commentaries? Is that sort of how that happened?
yes, well, the first commentary I did, well, it wasn't a commentary. It was that little documentary thing on the Criterion One Eye Jacks. They were researching it in order to do the disc, and they saw that I had a Facebook page for the book, and they reached out and asked me if I would be interested in helping them put something together.
I didn't realize it was that recent. I thought you've been doing it longer than that.
No, that was, and I did the first real commentary I did was Night of the Grizzly for Olive. I did that one. I think that was the first. And I reached out to Kino Lorber because they were going to do Under Western Sky. Was it Under Western Stars? No, they were doing a Roy Rogers, and they ended up doing two. And I was like, I really want to do this, and so they said okay, and so that got me going with them. I've done quite a few for them, and then Kit Parker is a friend, and so I'm working with him on some stuff and things like that. So it's just kind of been organic, and then places of the imprint folks and the era folks, they've so it's really cool. It's been really fun. I love doing them. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because the research in those feeds the book, and the book feeds the commentary. So all of that time you put into it kind of gets spread around,
Hmm.
and the blog, of course, they all kind of work together and move everything forward. So it's been good.
Let's talk a little bit about the research that goes into those because I've been doing them as well now, and I don't think people realize how intensive, how labor intensive a commentary is. Well, but that's a tricky thing because it's not for everybody. Some people just kind of phone them in. Some people are
Yeah,
doing one or two of them a week, which you can't do well.
no,
That's
it
impossible to
takes
do
me a
well.
month. It takes me a month
Yeah,
at least.
yeah.
I just did um, The Lonely Man with Anthony Hopkins and Jack Palance, and I did it in a month, and it was tight to get it done.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a lot. It is. I when I did the one for Night of the Grizzly, um, I reached out to people. I listened to a few commentaries, and then I wrote to some people and said, "How do you do this? You know, do you just make notes and wing it?" And some people said yes, and then others said no. It's scripted, and they're like, once I get going, I try to deviate a little bit so it's a little bit fresh. But no, it's scripted. Mine's scripted down to the second. I mean, I have I use the time code. I'm sure to get it down. And so if I ramble on or slow down or something, I'd screw myself and have to go back and fix it.
Yeah.
But you know, and I always feel like at the end I just want to shut up and let the big finale play out. I always feel like, people have been listening to me for an hour and 10 minutes, and now the shooting has started. I'm just going to shut up and let it go because I wouldn't, and I wouldn't listen to 10 minutes of me ramble on about these things. So. Because I feel like, you go to the movies. This is interesting. You go to the movies, and there's some guy sitting, a couple seats down that runs his mouth through the whole thing, and you want to strangle him. But then you buy a DVD and you put it on, and you listen to some other loudmouth, you or I, ramble on for an hour and a half, and we paid money for it.
Yeah, it's value added material when we do it.
You added, yeah, right. Oh, this guy,
yeah,
he sounds like a hick, but he's obviously seen a lot of stupid movies.
Well, I know exactly. I know what you mean, and I struggle sometimes with. I don't want to know. I do want to know as much as I can know about a movie, and then sometimes I regret that I know as much as I do because it kind of demystifies what is kind of. It takes a little bit of the magic out of it.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid watching some movie and saying something like, "Oh, there's a map painting or whatever," and I remember my mom going, "Just once, I would like to sit down and just watch a movie." And
oh, that's what my wife says to me like 3 times a week. She's like, "Do we have to do this every day? Do you have to talk about what you see on screen all the time?" Like, yes, I can't help it.
Okay, so what's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh man, I don't know that I have. No, I can. The movie that I credit, this is gonna be a surprise to you, because it's not it's not one of the classics or anything like that. The movie that I credit with really igniting my film fandom is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves from 1991, because I was
Really?
like, yeah, I was like 12 years old when that thing came out, and it was the first movie where I wasn't just watching it and I was like, well, this is great. I was looking at the shot composition and I
Yeah,
was looking at the lighting and I was looking at the choreography of the fights and I was listening to the score and then I was following those people to other things that they did. Um, but I will say I grew up in a house where w movies were not encouraged, and I think that's part of why I latched onto them so much. To be perfectly blunt, I grew up in like a really religious house, and movies were preached against as being a
yeah,
tool of the devil, right? And
yeah.
so, while I could occasionally see something like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, there was a lot of Turner Classic Movies or AMC, which used to be American Movie Classics, before it became like the Walking Dead
Yeah,
channel or
it was
whatever.
great once upon a time.
Yeah. So there were always old films. I remember specifically Born Yesterday, the Judy Holliday film Born Yesterday being on, and me watching it as a little fella and liking it, and like, who's this? Broderick Crawford? Like, who's this guy? Um, but I didn't start to connect with that
I
stuff
love Robert
really.
Crawford. I'm glad I love Robert.
He's
Highway
fantastic.
Patrol is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, just because he pulls up in a police car and just barks at people. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Oh no, this is a tangent, but what is the movie? I can't think of the name of it. He's in a Western from the 50s where he is this old, washed up alcoholic sheriff, and they go on this trail. They think it's a like a hangman's posse kind of a situation.
Fast
They're looking.
Posse, is that it?
That's it. That's it. And he
1953.
gives a speech by the fire. They're like, what's an old alcoholic like you even doing out here or something? He gives a speech. I mean, and it's basically feels like the writer, the screenwriter, is just channeling World War II experience. It's like
Yeah,
you can't forget. You
right,
can't forget that there's some things you can't forget. There's some things a man's got to do because he can't not do it. Or it's like
right.
Well, that's one of the things that I connect with about those movies now, especially as an adult, because there's so much truth in them. And in an era now where there's no truth in anything, everything is just a
Right.
shiny.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's a product to sell. I
Right.
say to sell air fresheners at Target. Sell dangle it from your car rearview mirror.
Right.
Sell
I
bed
love the
sheets.
line in I think it's 7 Men from Now. I can't. All of a sudden, they're all squishing together.
I know.
Randall Scott says, "There's some things a man can't ride around," and I think of that all the time. It just is like this little piece of personal advice that pops in my head when something's coming up, and you just want to blow it off. Randy won't let me. I can't. Some things a man can't ride
Randy, you and your friend Randy.
around. Yeah, my
Um,
friend. Yeah, we're tight.
did do you have a favorite movie? Like, can you
Oh,
pinpoint it to
absolutely. It's been
one?
my favorite movie since I was 9 years old. Where Eagles Dare with Clint Eastwood and Richard Burton.
Really?
Yep, I've seen it over 100 times. I quit counting at 100 because that was embarrassing, and I just love it. I just love it. It has 1,000 things wrong with it, but and it's implausible and all those other things, but I just love it. It's 2.5 hours long, but it feels like it's 45 minutes long. And I've already talked about this. I don't like long movies, and that one, it doesn't matter. And I think that's important. When a movie, you lose track of time like that, that's something's going on. I mean, Brian Hutton followed it with followed Regal Star with Kelly's Heroes, and I love Kelly's Heroes, but it feels like it's 2.5 hours. Regal's Dare does not. So it's really interesting to kind of contrast that. Regal's Dare has its and does something that's interesting. Is the first 45 minutes of the movie are setting things up for the back half of the movie as they figure out how to get in the castle and they set up all their explosives on the side of the road, and you have no idea what they're doing. And then as the last half of the movie, as they make their escape, you're getting all these aha moments, like, oh, those little explosives blow up the power poles and they fall in the road and stop the Nazis. I mean, it just unfolds in this cool way that, unlike most movies I've ever seen, that one's my favorite, and I would go watch it right now if I could.
You just led me to a natural transition to talk about the Hannibal 8 because you don't just have 50 Westerns from the 50s, you also
Right,
have the Hannibal 8 website where you talk about non-Western
right,
classic films like Where Eagles Dare.
yeah,
Tell me a little bit about how that. There's no bio there. The about for that site is like, what do you want to know about me? Go watch movies or
right,
something like that.
right. Well, the deal is that's what it's about. I was like, I really the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 months of 50s westerns, I didn't really know what I was doing. Kind of finding my way. What do people like? What do I like doing? What do people seem to like to read, and that kind of stuff. And so once I kind of found my place and it was going pretty well, and I'd go, you know, I watched the original Thing for the 57th time last night. That'd be fun to write about. And so it was just like, well, I'm just going to start another one to do the movies that aren't 50s westerns. And I eventually started writing about westerns that weren't from the 50s on the 50s westerns thing, and that was hard. It's like, I'm not going to write about TV. I'm not going to write about movies from the 40s and beyond and older. And then I was like, I'm being an idiot. And so because they all, it's got a history and a context, and so it really does matter. But that was the Hannibal was just like I was cheating myself by not letting me, talk about other movies that I love that are just as important to me as the Western stuff. And so that was fun. And it when I was researching for work how to do blogs, and one of the things I said was a blog that is very specific in its subject matter will find its audience faster and will grow, and they tend to be more successful because people who are a nut job about that thing go to that blog. And that is the Hannibal 8 has never had as large an audience as the 50s one did. And so, but it's been a lot of fun. I'd write about the Mr. Wong movies and all that stuff all day long if I could. I love those things. So it was kind of fun.
Have you ever thought about expanding into other forms, other mediums, like, YouTube or any? I don't even know.
I did a podcast and it was fun, but I don't know. I didn't take it seriously enough. I didn't put enough effort into it, so I kind of got tired of it and tanked it.
Well, that's
And
kind of the
that
thing is
was
that whatever you
a
do,
lot of
you have
work.
to do all the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd see with my blog, like like right now, I'm really busy with work, and so um, it slows down, and so you can kind of like, no, I got, and so you you can't take a break. If you take a break, it hurts them really bad, and so I just feel like I was spreading myself too thin. I'd love to, I just
Yeah.
haven't really done much.
Well, come hang out with me here at Cereal at Midnight as often as you feel like, and we can
You,
talk about
you
old
say the
movies.
word, I'll be there. You say the
We
word, I will be there.
we've done the intro now, so like we've done like who you are and what you do. So from now we could just pick a movie and just talk about it.
All right. So, what's a movie you watched recently? We can talk about for 2 minutes.
Well, it would be one of the Range Busters movies, is what I've
Oh, those are
that's
awesome.
most of what I've been watching.
Yeah,
Have you seen any of it? Like, what do you think about this?
it's been a long time. Those since I was a kid that I've seen them.
Yeah,
I like them. I love how I think it's really cool how those movies were clearly made with the idea that everybody knew those people. Their personalities, everything was established, and it's sort of like a franchise movie today, where you just know the audience is aware of what's going on, so like you can just jump right into the story. You don't have to have a whole lot of setup. I
yeah.
find that interesting. And that's one of the things I think is really cool about the B westerns is they always sort of work with this knowledge that you're in on it,
Yeah,
and
and you
that's
have to
that,
be in on it to really get the most out of it. I should
right.
set it up. I didn't plan to talk about them, so let me set it up for people so they know what I'm talking about. So in the late was it? I'm trying to think when the Three Musketeers. That was all through the 30s, right?
Those were the
So
late 30s. Yeah,
that was Republic.
yeah.
Crash Corrigan had been in those. They were, I think there's 51 Three Musketeers movies. I'm not saying Musketeers. I'm saying Musketeers. Um, with Ray Crash Corrigan, with John Wayne's in I think eight of them, and Max Terhune is in them with his ventriloquist dummy. Which this whole thing is so bizarre to me because it's the idea they're out on the trail and he's entertaining people with
Yeah,
his ventriloquist dummy, but it's just the times, right?
yeah.
And then there was a dispute, like a money dispute with Crash and Republic, and so he goes to Monogram, and they do basically the same kind of thing, but it's the Range Busters, and it's again it's Crash Corrigan, it's Max Terhune, and they bring in John Dusty King, and that's for the first. There's like three waves of those movies, and that's the first wave of those. And to what you're saying, they just assume, well, you know these guys because they've been in dozens and dozens of Three Musketeers movies, and you see them everywhere. And then Ray Corrigan like creates Corriganville, and they're like you just knew who these people were.
Yeah.
So I guess like 5 times a year you catch up with them. It's more than that, more than 5 times a year because they made
Made a bunch
20,
of them in a short period of time. I mean, all of them.
24, I think, in 3 years between 41 and 43. They made 24, I think. Um, and look, they're not great, they're
No, they're
very
not great at
formulaic.
all. They're actually sort of, they're not as good as the Musketeer films,
No,
but
no.
I love them, but they're not, Republic's B movies have a polish to them that most of, Monogram and those others
Yeah.
can't really.
Republic is just the best for what
Like,
they did. Come on.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, and I read up on Republic all the time, just breaks my heart. And they were so good at what they did, and they just kept doing it, and the public was moving on. TV had come along, and
Yeah.
westerns were saturated, and they just didn't. They just didn't zig when they should have zagged. They zigged when they should have zagged, or whatever you want to say.
Right.
They should have adapted, and they did when they tried to jump on, juvenile delinquent movies and monster movies or whatever else. It was just too late. And,
When they got into Catsman territory.
yeah. Well, Casson was the best, man. He was find a trend or something topical and make a movie about it in a week and get it out there while the news was
Yeah.
still out there.
The next trend's going to be Calypso. Let's jump on that.
Exactly. And they had, and Katzman's movies are great. They're cheap and some of them are terrible, but he had he was a little tiny unit in a big studio, and he had good people working on them, so they just have something going on, with them that other things don't. Some of William Castle's movies are really good. Masterson of Kansas from 1954 with George Montgomery, and it's awesome. That's a really good little western. And then some of the things that Fred Sears did. Fred Sears, I think, was a really good director that got stuck making cheap movies, and he was cranking them out so fast that he killed himself. He just had a heart attack at his desk at Columbia with like
Died at the table, just fell over on his work.
With 6 or 8 movies unreleased sitting there completed. I mean, that's how fast he was working.
Yeah.
And some of those things are really good. And that's, Fury at Gunsight Ridge is his. And that is such a cool little movie. That's a great way to spend 65 minutes. That is an awesome movie. So
yeah. I would encourage anybody that's watching this, if you haven't seen, if you only know even with the exploitation guys, if you only know the usual suspects, veer off that path and check out some of this other stuff. Castle, Mill Creek Entertainment put out a William Castle set 5 years ago, maybe. I think it's 8 William Castle westerns.
Yeah, they're real. Some of them are really. Masterson of Kansas is one of those. They're really good.
Yeah, check those out.
Good. So
this proves what we were saying, though, that there's just so much out there, and it's kind of the work of, it's not work, but it there's so much to explore and to discover. I asked you, if you don't mind me saying this, I'm going to say, if you want me to cut this out, I'll cut it out. But I asked you how you felt about the modern take on westerns in an email, and you're like, I'm not watching anything new.
Right.
It's too much old stuff to watch.
Exactly. And my family's made a real effort to, get more current films, and we just sit them around, and every once in a while we'll say, well, we're going to watch them. But then we end up watching the same things. And I just, like the lady who rented Psycho and said that black and white hurt her eyes. The aesthetic of current movies, I don't like. I think they're ugly looking. And
now, do you mean shot digitally because of digital photography, or
no,
just
I thought they were ugly before digital, but now they're really ugly. I just think they're ugly and they're kind of flat looking, and I don't like that. And I'm probably one of the only people that doesn't like surround sound. It's obnoxious, and I don't like that. There's movies that use it well. Sorcerer from 1977, William Friedkin's Sorcerer, which is a masterpiece and one of my all-time favorite films. I have a blog dedicated just to Sorcerer. It's such a favorite film. That had the best surround sound I ever heard in my entire life, because it was designed specifically to put you in the jungle. And so it was birds and stuff constantly. So it was all very natural, and it put you in a place. It wasn't trying to create a roller coaster ride or anything. It just was enhancing the story. Just look, these guys are deep in the jungle. Listen, and you'd hear it all around you, and it was terrific. It did its job. Now it's like I don't just, but I don't want to sound like a snob or something. But I just don't. There's just, like, some people don't like the way old movies look. I don't like the way new movies look, and I don't like the way they're cut. And a chase scene, you should always know who's in front. When people are shooting at each other, you should know where they are relative to each other, rather than just see a lot of muzzle fire coming out. It's each action scene is like a little story, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you don't do that, what is it? It's not. It's like an effects reel, and they just don't work the same way.
Well, and if that's all you know, if that's all you've ever seen,
right? Exactly.
Then that's what you think is great.
Right. I think people who knew, 80s and 90s action movies, who sat down and watched Ronin and saw, John Frankenheimer do a car chase the way they're supposed to be done.
That's a great movie.
It is a great movie.
Yeah.
I'm sure that movie blew a lot of people away.
I took a date to see Ronin I think it was 98. I took a date to see Ronin, and she fell asleep. And I was like, well, that's what I need to know. Yeah.
Wow. I took a date to see Poltergeist, and she was scared and wanted to leave. And I was like, I guess we're done.
Yeah.
but she stayed. But I was like, oh, no, this doesn't work. So,
What's your sorcerer blog? What's that?
um, I guess it was sort of a thing to see how many people liked it, and
Yeah.
I was just kind of got in. I was just kind of into it and got really into it. I saw it opening day in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was my dad and I and another couple. That was it. Four people. Opening night, 7 o'clock, and I just always loved it, and I love the music. I just love everything about it. It's just a really cool movie,
Hmm.
and it just was. I just thought one day I'd been kind of wallowing in it, and I was like, I'm gonna do a blog about this thing just to see if people really like it, if there's other people out there. And my timing was perfect because it was when Freakin decided to sort out the rights and try to get it re-released, and so it just kind of I had a lot of material to talk about, and somebody pointed it out to Friedkin that it existed, and he um, plugged it on Twitter for me and stuff.
Really?
So it was just really cool. It just really one of those things that just really I ended up at the right place at the right time, and it just was really cool. And
I'll link
it's
to that in the description of this so people can find that one too. Do you know the
it's
URL of it?
sorcerer1977.wordpress.com.
Okay.
So it's
Is
just
there
a
anything else any other blogs I don't know about?
well, I started a music one and I deleted it because I thought everything that made it was so easy for me to write about movies, but music, which I love just as much as the movies, was really hard for me to write about. And so I
Yeah.
was like, nah, this is I'm failing miserably at this. So I shut it down.
It's,
Um,
I mean, I'm a music guy too. Isn't it interesting how we chase these things into different areas? I've
yeah,
got my Alabama Record Collectors Association mug that I'm drinking out of today. And hey, the Alabama Record Collector show is coming up
yeah,
quickly. I
that's awesome.
can't wait. But it's so interesting to be like when you find when like once you start to devote yourself to this stuff, you end up like paperbacks, right? I'm assuming you probably have
Oh
a
yeah,
paperback collection
yeah.
too. Yeah.
Got some. I'm trying to see if there's one handy here, but no. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny. You just wallow in it, and it was weird years and years and years ago when I was just amassing all these movie books, and you move and you start trying to purge them, and you just realize you have so many. And I was like, one of these days, this stupid copy of Fangoria that has an interview with Gerd Oswald in it talking about the outer limits or whatever it is. I'm going to need that. I'm going to sit on that because I might need it. Sure enough, he
Yeah.
directed Fury at Showdown and he talked about it in that interview. And so it's kind of, you wallow around in this stuff and you drag a lot of junk around, but you never know. I felt so vindicated when I was like, I got to find it was Film Facts. It wasn't Fangoria, it was Film Facts. So you're like, I have that. I know I have Gert Oswald talking about this movie. I've got to go find it. So
This is a great place to just put a pin in it for now, and we'll pick it up where we left off at a future date. But I want to thank you so much for being here, for coming on to Serial at Midnight. I told you when we emailed back and forth, I was like, I've wanted to talk to you for years, but I was afraid you'd say no, so I didn't ask you until recently.
now I'll talk about movies with anybody, unless they're going to try to convince me that I should watch something.
But have you seen the Fast and the Furious 10? Because it's really
I haven't seen one, much less 10.
there's maybe you've seen the Corman version of the Fast and the Furious from
Yes,
19.
I've seen that one. I
Yeah.
think I have it. It's around here somewhere.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna put links in the description of this episode for all of your websites for the books. Just promote. Like this is a great opportunity for you
Okay.
to
Well, there's
tell us
three
what's going on.
blogs. There's the Sorcerer blog. There's 50 Westerns from the 50s. And there's the Hannibal 8. And the Hannibal 8 was named after the car Jack Lemmon drove in the Great Race, the Hannibal 8. I was going to call it Half-Ass Astronaut, which is a line from Jaws, but I ended up figuring I would probably, somebody would complain. So I went with the
You'd hear from Spielberg.
probably. And there's those. I've written the two books, the One Eye Jack's book, and then one on the Gauntlet. And the Gauntlet is a bit of a prototype for a kind of a series of books. I'm kind of kicking around the idea of to see how they would work and whether they would be fun to work on. It's almost like a movie, DVD commentary in a book in a way. My wife and I are messing around with that. And then there's the book that I want to live long enough to finish. One on Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, everybody's written about Bonnie and Clyde, but I wanted to write about it being made, not all the stuff that you hear about all the time, Cannes Film Festival and all that stuff, but them going to those dinky little towns in Texas and shooting stuff in these places, and people that went there had actually seen Bonnie and Clyde. When at the that's fascinating to me. My grandparents are from that area. Um, I just love it. And there's that one, and then there's my big fat telephone book sized Sam Katzman book. That's the one. That is the one.
Listen, you have to like get exercise, make sure your blood pressure is in a good place so that you can survive to finish this Katzman book.
Well, if I've toyed with the idea of doing a Katzman, kind of like I did with One Eyed Jacks, where I just sort of did as I would research things and find a cool picture or whatever, I'd stick it on this Facebook page.
Yeah.
And people found it, and actually, I was able to interview one of the few surviving people that worked on it because her ex-husband was looking at my Facebook page. So it really opened some doors. So I think maybe I should do that again with Sam Katzman Facebook page, because use Facebook because young people don't give a crap about Sam Katzman, but old people might, and Facebook is skews older. So no, I'm not being old myself. I'm thinking about the demographics here and what's the best tool for the job. And so I've been thinking about that one.
I will be the first follower of that page the second it goes up.
Then I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Will you help me? Will you contribute?
Oh yeah.
However, we'll figure that out later.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, very good.
People do not know who Sam Katzman. They know who William Castle is. They know who Alfred Hitchcock is. They know who a lot of people know some of these old movie makers. But Sam Katzman made 250 films, and I've seen most of them.
But I made a video about him. It wasn't just about him.
That's the first thing I was looking up Sam Katzman, and I was like, oh, somebody made a video on YouTube of talking about Sam Katzman.
It's pretty cursory, but I did it. Yeah.
Doing the commentary for Chicago Syndicate, doing a commentary for a Sam Katzman movie was a dream come true. But when I was 8 years old, I knew who Sam Katzman was.
Yeah.
Because I'd watched just all the Bowery Boys and all that Jungle Jim and all that stuff. You just you probably did it too when you're little. You watch these things and you see enough of them and you start recognizing these names. I knew who Sam Katzman was. He did the second Batman serial, so I knew who Sam Katzman was.
Yeah.
I just bought a Bolex 8mm projector the other day, a used one, and it is the same one I had as a little kid, and I had the little 200-foot reels, 8mm standard 8 Batman serial, and I watched that thing 1,000 times. And so
how long was it?
It was only 800. I mean, it was heavily condensed.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was great, and I watched it over and over and over and over.
It was like the whole serial in 12 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. But I found the projector, and I got it, and I got to replace the belt. The belt was dry rotted.
Yeah.
But get the new belt, and then I'm going to go try to find those 8mm.
How much are those 8mm movies, or not movies, but how much are those 8mm reels going for these days? I mean, I'm sure it's all over the place.
I mean, I bought some at a flea market last weekend I bought some Black Hawk Buster Keaton films for $5 a piece.
What?
But you just got to be careful. Some of them are they're some of them have got the vinegar thing going on, and some of them are just messed up. And there's other ways they can get messed up. They can shrink and all this other stuff. And the ones that are in color, like the cartoons, the color's almost always faded. But these Black Hawks, they're in great shape. I've got a Laurel and Hardy and 2 Buster Keatons. And that's the way I'm watching those Black Hawk silent comedy. Those are some of the first movies I ever watched on film. And then we got that Batman thing. And then after that, I got the Castle Films Creature from the Black Lagoon, and it was all over after that. It was all over after that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh man. All right, this conversation has to continue, but let's wind it. I'm gonna say goodbye to people. We're gonna keep talking after we end this
I,
recording.
oh, I
Um,
want to say hey to Steve Bowen. He said to me, "You want to get on Serial at Midnight." He's the he's preaching the gospel about physical media. You need to get on there. So
did Steve Bowen reach out to me and ever like I don't remember everybody. I don't remember Steve, but maybe he did. I don't know.
he's just
Steve,
he lives in Durham. I've seen he and I used to go to movies together every once in a while at the Graham Cinema when they run westerns every once in a while. We saw, She Wore Yellow Ribbon and Stagecoach and stuff like that. And he's just a really nice guy. Likes collects all this junk that we do.
yeah,
And he brought it up. So
it happened. It finally happened.
it finally happened. Thanks, Steve.
And Steve, this is just the beginning. We're gonna keep this going.
It's
Toby,
Sam Katzman next.
yes, Toby, thank you so much for making time
Thank
to talk to
you
me today.
so much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope we do this about 10,000 more times. And I will get the lighting figured out better so I don't look like one of those anonymous interviews in a true crime documentary. So.
Well, and you asked me to pitch your voice down, which I thought was weird because
You wanted to sound like this. I
Exactly.
first discovered Sam Katzman when I
Exactly.